Oh, hello everybody. Welcome
Assalamu
to
alaikum
Mind
wa
Heist.
rahmatullah.
Welcome to Mind Heist episode 137,
Yes, sir.
aka the 17th of November,
Oh,
aka
bro, now
official
they're going to know
Spider-Man
that we
trailer day.
record 5 months in advance, bro.
Bro, no. I stayed up last night till 1:30 in the morning, and I say what last night, this morning, waiting for that Spider-Man trailer, because Spider-Man is the nice guy. I was thinking about this off the back of the red pill stuff. This is
Yeah,
a really good segue.
yeah.
So I tweeted, I did some tweets yesterday because I was kind of like after our red pill episode, which was very popular compared to a few other episodes we've done on this kind of topic. Um, but I think it definitely got shared in some circles. I think there's what's the name of the channel? Is it Qawamun?
Yes.
Um, the that individual, I don't know his name, I'm afraid.
Shahid
Shahid, okay. Shahid shared it
in his
like a
Telegram
in the
channel.
Telegram channel, which is quite popping, which I also exposed myself to as well. That was
Yeah,
an
man.
interesting arena. Um, just a caveat: my voice is really bad. Like my throat hurts so much. So I'm having something warm to get me through.
Just don't
But
slurp in the mic.
I'll try my best, but it is part of the journey of Mind Heist. What was I talking about? Peter Parker, right? So I was talking about. I might bring this tweet up. Where is it? I did a bit of a thread yesterday, right? If I can find it, yeah. Here's one of them. Here's one of the tweets. Share that screen. Share my entire screen. Okay. Yeah, sure. Why not? How do I do this? Oh, Chrome tab. Just share this. Boom. Hello. Can you see my screen?
Yes, there we can.
There we go. So I shared this. I said, do Muslim. Wait, my previous. Before I shared this, I did a big long thread ranting about red pilled acts, right? Because I kind of delved into it a lot more after
Okay.
we, we did that. And I was kind of like, okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to be taken as a poster child for anti-red pill and feminist champion man, right? Got to keep it balanced. Everybody gets criticism evenly, right? So part of my criticism of some women was, do Muslim girls not want nice guys? Is Ondine with a hint of road an actual thing? I'll scream and shout at red-pilled acts until the cows come home, but I definitely see nice, chilled Muslim lads getting overlooked because they haven't got the edge that some women want. And I'll stop sharing quickly while we discuss. Now, and this reminded me about then I watched that Spider-Man trailer or whatever, and then I was thinking about Peter Parker as a character, right? And he's very typical, kind of like, at least traditionally, he's like a nerdy sort of. Peter Parker's nerdy. He never gets it right, especially like the old movies and the old comics. He's always looked down upon, always getting bullied at school and stuff. But like nobody knows the strength that he's got because he's Spider Man,
Yeah.
right? And with great power comes great responsibility and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying all men need to be nerdy, weak Peter Parkers, but I just that nice guy kind of persona is one that's overlooked a lot, and that's something really prevalent in non-Muslim culture. You watch any sort of film or any sort of book, the underdog is always like the meek one, the agreeable one, the one that doesn't really cause any issues and stuff. And Hollywood has promoted that time and time again, right? And Hollywood also sheds light on the sort of the jock, the kind of what's the word, the popular, obnoxious Conor McGregor type. This is actually one of our listeners. Shout out to Majd Khasib. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He actually replied to that tweet, funnily enough, which I'll bring up. He said, "What's a nice guy and what's edge? That'll probably differ by the crowd. Let's see what we're talking about. Let's say that we're talking about the proper religious crowd. Nice might be code for weak, timid, and lack of vision, and edge might be simply embodying strength, not jerk or being a rebel." To which I responded that I'd argue red. Oh no. I did respond to this. Someone else I responded to accused me of supporting red pills and then they delete their account. But that's another story for another day. This is why I responded. I said, I consider it the importation of schoolyard popularity contests into the Muslim community. Nice could be overly agreeable. Edge could mean a slight attitude, cockiness, and overconfidence. The typical jock stereotype. Think of Conor McGregor. And take that down. So a lot of my theory is a lot of the kind of going back to like the dissatisfaction that people have with red-pilled acts post-marriage. Okay, because I think that's the issue here. And going back to the question that we had about Mehdi Tijani and his videos, right? My initial assumption was like, well, based on the things I'm hearing of this guy, he can't have been married before. And then I found, oh, he has been married before. So there must have been a level of issues within those marriages that has, caused this dissatisfaction to spur up and create all of this content, right? This endless stream of content. Because we said last episode, didn't we? We said, if you're kind of content and happy with your marriage, you haven't got the energy to talk about these issues too much, at least so, passionately. Allah knows best, everybody for themselves. But it did remind me of this kind of thing. It's like, there are plenty of nice guys, bro. And I know that that's a loaded kind of term this day and age, but there's just some dudes, some acts that they're just, they're pretty much the ideal husband or whatever. But there is this unfortunate kind of stereotype of women in general, and unfortunately some Muslim women have adopted this in this context, of wanting someone a bit more, a bit more edgy, a bit more like, oh, he's too practicing, or he's too nice, he doesn't argue. There's a member of my family once, she was talking about her marriage, right? And the other member of the family that she's obviously married to, very nice guy, alhamdulillah, really, practicing, whatever you want to call it. I remember once she complained to me, she's like, you know what, he doesn't, like, when I argue with him, he just doesn't argue back. Like, I need somebody that can argue back, I was just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, surely this is like a quote unquote holy grail of a man, right? Somebody who wouldn't argue back with you, he's quite nice and that. And if they disagrees with something, he's not going to cause a scene. But maybe there's this element of feistiness, or element of like, keep the excitement going, or whatever you want to call it. What do you think of me? And I've spoken long enough, my throat hurts. What do you think?
Right, I told you about that video that was going around where they're interviewing Algerian women.
Yeah.
And like, there's basically, they took all the bits where the literally many women, they're like, li ma yضربنيش مشي راجل. Yeah. That's what I thought of when you were saying that now. Like, if my husband doesn't hit me, then he's not a real man, kind of thing. So that's just funny. That's what I thought of when you said that. But I don't understand where you stand on this, because on one hand, I thought you were saying that the nice guy should have some more edge to him. But then on the other hand, I thought you saying the opposite kind of thing, that it's good that he's the nice guy.
Yeah. So what my thing is, right? Because of these societal constructs that we have, right? The guy with the edge is actually generally leans towards extremes. And the guy with the niceness can also fall into extremes. And, the extreme end of nice guys can actually suddenly become like the incels that I was talking to you about. Like the guys that completely give up on women because they can never get a woman.
Yeah.
So then they end up becoming like
drinking Mountain Dew in their mum's basement. That's the cliche, right?
And this is where I kind of went down the rabbit hole of with incels, is like the terrorist attacks that have been done in their name now. There was one in Plymouth recently.
Oh yeah,
in the UK.
And I was going to say that's the exact caricature, if you like, of somebody who would do a school shooting, who would. That's actually the type of person. They struggle probably with similar issues.
Yeah.
Some of them kind of are able to deal with it maybe through the virtual world. World of Warcraft comes to mind.
Yeah.
But some people they don't cope that way, and they unleash these feelings on innocent people.
Now my thing is with it, and maybe I'm rushing to the conclusion of my thoughts on all of this, but I think the key thing that both sides need to borrow from each other is, that the red pill needs to learn compassion, right? Really deep compassion. Needs to understand that just because women want something doesn't mean they're being unreasonable, or doesn't mean they're being disobedient. I think and I'll go into a thread that I wrote about this, because I was getting a bit wound up with how women generally, and unfortunately, get their opinions get disregarded because you're the woman. You're meant to just follow me. You're meant to just, wherever I go, you go. That notion of, and that notion exists in a particular context. A woman would generally follow wherever her husband has to be. Okay, I mean, for example, you traveled across the world in terms of traveling to different countries and stuff, and having to work for economic reasons, whatever. And your wife, with all due respect, obviously I don't know the deep situation, but the fact is your wife's with you, all right?
Yeah.
And I'd expect the same from my wife, and my wife understands that. However, it doesn't mean that we just completely exclude them from those decision making or the concerns that they may have, or whatever it might be, But it's like, okay, everything a woman wants or needs or has ambitions for, it doesn't matter anymore. That's it. Put that in the bin. We need to follow what I'm doing, no questions asked. And I just feel like a complete misinterpretation of what your role is as a leader. But we'll get into that. And then as far as the nice guys, I think what they have to really borrow from the cocky people, so to speak, is confidence in themselves and what they are and what they are into and what they like, right? I think just thinking back into like when I was at school, and I would consider myself a nice guy at school, right? I would, because before I was practicing, bro, no woman was ever interested in me, like not whatsoever. Like being in that schoolyard setting.
Bro, it was that messy afro you had, bro.
Oh, bro, absolutely. No, bro. Can you imagine, Aki? No, not at all. Not at all. I remember flipping, even at prom, bro. I remember getting turned down at prom for prom dates and stuff like that. And I'm just being real with you. Like, I was absolutely that nice guy. But, and then I started hanging out with Muslims after college and stuff. And I was a bit more proud about who I was and where I came from. But I still wasn't really who I was. I was pretending to be like this roadman, or pretending to be very street, or whatever you want to call it. I didn't grow up like that. But that gave me an air of confidence. And then after that, when I like really started taking my deen seriously, bro, what the deen gave me was an opportunity to just appreciate and be confident about what I'm into and what I like, right? So then when I met my wife, she was like, "Oh, what kind of hobbies are you into, whatever?" I was like, "Yeah, do you know what? I really like video games. I'm a big Nintendo fan." Like that. But I remember at school, I was very ashamed to ever bring that up, Oh, I collect and read comics or whatever. At school, I didn't want to tell anybody unless it was my close friends, I'd hide that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be confident about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? That's the kind of thing that makes you interesting. And that's the kind of thing that it doesn't matter what you're into, or it doesn't matter who you are. What matters is that you're happy with yourself.
Yeah.
You don't hide that and pretend to be something else.
That's what ultimately is attractive.
That's what it is, bro. Like, who cares? You're passionate about flipping, I don't know, building model trains. Like, that's the most quirkiest thing I could think of. Dude, just be proud of it. Like, be happy that you do it. Like, show it off. Like, honestly. And it's that confidence. I mean, look how many... Go on YouTube now, bro, and search flipping model trains. That's just an example. I've never done that before, but an example. You'll find people, I'm sure you'll find YouTubers with like millions of views, with huge audiences. And guess what? Men and women. It's not just going to be just one gender, so to speak, following all of that. So I think the schoolyard, the schoolyard politics that we've all been embedded into because of the mixed gendered schools, because of that, bro, we have then carried that with us for the rest of our lives and not realized. And I'll tell you why. The only mixing that generally practicing Muslims ever have, most practicing Muslims, most of the mixing ever occurs in school. As soon as they leave school, there's way less mixing. So their perception of what women want is still based on that schoolyard politics, because that's the last kind of heavy interaction they've had with women. Not realizing that actually once you leave school and all these walls and barriers and cliques and groups, and sort of league tables, so to speak, of popularity, they kind of melt away. Because I'm sure, bro, when you were at school, and at least I know when I was at school, you could look at someone and you could kind of tell what kind of group they belong to. You could, okay, those guys are the ones that play sports a lot and they're the popular kids or whatever. These guys are clearly the nerds that play video games a lot, whatever. These guys are the studious guys that are really smart. I might want to go to them when I want to revise. That kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But in the real world, bro, a lot of those walls melt away. And suddenly you're working with people that are from all sorts of different backgrounds, all of this stuff that,
And you kind of
and
just got to get on with it.
absolutely. And the guys that are trying to get married the most, bro, are going to be the ones that have literally just left school or maybe still at university or college or whatever, right? So they're still thinking with that schoolyard mentality. And this is just a theory, bro. It's absolutely theoretical in my head. But I definitely see it perpetuating even after those kind of stages of our lives are over. What do you think on that so far?
In terms of like they need to, yani each needs to gain something. Yes. Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, obviously we're not saying we're ideal, but we're just talking about, I guess, observations, and, you know, we might fall on one side of this spectrum that we're talking about, right? One thing that I was thinking about, I just love this kind of concept that I'm sure many people have said it, but I remember hearing it from Jordan Peterson, where he said that it's not a virtue to be harmless. It's a virtue to be dangerous, but never use that in a bad way, right? And I really agree with that. And I think that's what, you know, when you say like they want, what did he say? They want a hint of road. They want,
yeah.
I think that's maybe what they want. And I think that's completely acceptable or appropriate, right? What they want is they want to know that the one time in your 10-year marriage that you needed to stand up for them in the face of danger, that you do it. That's what they want. They don't want you to be road. Road is a proxy for able to be dangerous when need be.
Yeah.
Right? Able to stand up for himself, able to stand up for his kids, able to stand up for his wife. That's what it is. And from that point of view, I think every man should have that inside of him. However, what the other side might do is they perform that too much, you know. And I think a really cool example or analogy is the whole martial arts thing. What's the whole ethos behind a lot of martial arts is you're going to be a killer and no one will know. You're going to be a killer and you'll never use it. You'll use it once in your life. You'll use it twice in your life, right? That's the ethos of a lot of martial arts. That is what I find I actually find that as something to aim for, to be honest. I find that, I mean, people could take the whole killer thing out of context, but I mean, be able. Don't be a weakling. You can't do any harm to anyone. And then you're like, yeah, I'm a pacifist. I keep things peaceful. Well, you're keeping things peaceful because you can't do damage to anyone. Because you're a coward. Not because you're able to you know, knock the guy out. But you remember the words of the Prophet ﷺ, La taghdab, and you held yourself back. And you went and you did wudu and you calmed down. Because you realized knocking him out is not actually the right thing to do here. That is... I think something to aspire to, that you're able to do things and you don't when it's not the right time, you know? And that's why the number one attribute, I would say, of a Muslim man, and I need to comment on the emphasis on the word Muslim, the number one trait or characteristic is discipline. Is discipline. And I say Muslim man because I feel like a lot of, I mean, I read it myself in the book, like we mentioned last episode, Order of Men, right? And you hear it from the mouths of like these Muslim red pill guys, whatever. You hear them talking about how men are, right? How men often are, how women often are. And they say that, you might have heard this when you're going through Mehdi's videos, for example. You hear them say it's a praxeology. It is a study of human behavior. And we're just kind of commenting on observations of humans, right? Right. And I say to that, I say, okay, cool, like interesting, right? That is interesting. Anthropology, psychology, yeah, it's interesting, yeah. However, yani, where does Islam come into it, or where, yani, what's the point of talking about human behavior? Surely it's to improve human behavior. And you don't necessarily improve something by observing it. You need to observe it, but then you need to say, okay, the correct behavior is X, Y, Z. And so if you're observing men on average throughout time and you say, on average, men, they do X, Y, Z. For example, they start wars over ego. Yeah, let's say that was a thing. Yeah, that was a something that's proven, like it's a trend over time. Yeah,
Right.
is that a good thing or a bad thing? Now that we know it's a fact, let's say, we need to judge it. Is it good or is it bad? How do you judge it? Now the ideology needs to come in. Yeah. Now your belief of what's right and what's wrong, your aqidah, your whatever you want to call it, needs to come in. Your what's the word? Where where you get your source of knowledge from, epistemology. That's it. Now that needs to come in and dictate the next words that you say, because I think Allahu Alam, but what they seem to say is because men tend to be like that, we want to aim to be like that. Why? I don't know, like to spite feminists or something like that. But come on, like as a Muslim, we know that's not the way. The way is we observe human behavior and then we say, okay, how do we go Jannah? Basically.
Yeah. And it's easy, bro. Like if you're just observing human behavior, and this is another thing that I didn't like about the videos, is that he was using statistics of women and then making commentary about Muslim women without actually, obviously saying that these statistics aren't from Muslim women. These are general women, from God knows where. One of them was like, the one I saw was like, okay, every like 40% of women have like a backup man or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, 40, and then start talking about Muslim women, like alluding that it's Muslim women that have this issue. Bro, look, human behavior is like water to me, okay? Observable human behavior. You chuck water on a floor, it's going to go everywhere. You're going to see everything. You're going to see all sorts of different people. If I was to look at this specific group of men in a particular area that all have this particular mental health issue, I'd say all men are like this, all right? Or a specific group of people in this particular town or a village or whatever you want to call it, who have specific circumstances that are pushing them to do something crazy. I'd say, well, look, all men are like this, right? What do we borrow from? What's important is pouring that water into a bucket or a mold that is Islam. And how does that individual discipline themselves, control themselves, align themselves to those values of Islam, because Islam is there to guide, control, restrict, and encourage certain actions. Right? Think of, for example, about polygyny. The laws and legislation on polygyny before Islam. Well, people didn't really have any. They just do whatever they want. So actually, think of like a man with flipping 100 wives, right, or concubines, whatever you want to call it. How would he be with women compared to 10 years later, as a Muslim man trying to adopt Islam, how would he then be with women, right? And that kind of notion, the emphasis on the mother, the emphasis on women in general, the emphasis on the role that they play, all these other things that the deen has brought, of course. In these different societies, let's not forget, just because we focus on Arabia when it comes to Islam, doesn't mean that Islam didn't go to the rest of the world, to vastly different societies, and they all adopted it at the same time, in that sense. It's changed a lot of things, bro. So just saying, oh, men are this or men are that, is just way too broad. I don't really care what men are. What I care about is what Islam tells us that men should be, because there are going to be things that are easy for you to do, for example, that come naturally that Islam states, and that's fine. There are going to be things that Islam says to me to do that I'm going to find really difficult because that's not natural for me to do, right? And that's gonna repeat itself throughout the world. Men aren't just copy and pasted all over. Yes, there's going to be biological things that are similar. Generally speaking, men are going to be more stronger than women. Generally, most of the time, 99% of the time, right? But there is definitely going to be those outliers of men that aren't. And the woman's going to be stronger, whatever. What do you do in those situations? You can't just default to biology all the time, or default to these stereotypes or these sort of observations of men. You've got to just put that to the side in some context and really understand what because at the end of the day, it is all interpretive, isn't it? It's all like, we observe this, we observe that, therefore all men are this. Can you say for a certain that all men are a particular way when you haven't observed men in every single situation, in every single circumstance, in every single part of the world, in every part of time? A lot of the examples that maybe these thinkers or these red pillars, whatever you want to call them, talk about are historical sort of examples of strong men, right? And I have nothing against doing that, but actually you need to also bear in mind the intricacies and the details regarding society at that time, what responsibilities they had at that time, what kind of dialogue that actually you're not going to get from excavating archaeology, you're not going to get from, these are things that it's just guesswork mostly, but basically what I'm trying to say is there's a lot more detail to it. And actually, instead of trying to like search for the crumbs, why not go to the loaf of bread, such as the deen itself, that is right there in front of us? We can say is 100% true, right? With regard to that. Now, the only issue I said, and I suppose we spoke about this last time, is how that is interpreted a lot of time. And like we said, we interpret that with what we like to see and what we're used to seeing within our cultures and families, don't we?
Well, one lens that we interpret it through, and I know I've done this, I would say definitely, is I have a. Okay, so what happens a lot of the time is we overcorrect. Yeah. So something happens, and our reaction to that is not just enough to stop it happening. Let's say if it's a bad thing, but we stop happening and we attack it further, right? And so, if we're talking about feminism, again, I think sometimes we overcorrect. Okay, so the normal Muslim man in the Muslim world who's kind of connected to his traditions, and he's been doing certain things a certain way, and he's not been in a culture where he's not been influenced by feminism whatsoever. He's going to act in a kind of maybe calm and collected way. He's going to be acting a certain way. Why? Very much not thinking about why he's doing it. He's just living his life, right? However, in the West, when you're overcorrecting for feminism, you might do what we said in the last episode, which is you have this more performance masculinity, whatever, right? Where it's like that guy back in the Muslim world, he'd be like, yeah, I marry a divorcee, whatever, yeah. Whereas these guys are like, oh no, but because of feminism, these women think they can just divorce whenever they like. And it's like kind of like when you overthink things, that's just one example, of course. But, what I would advocate for, what I would aim for is just to be like not overcorrecting, just normal, just like, and I think, like I said, I've done this myself, like certain, I don't know, like maybe I feel threatened by certain normal things that women in my family or whatever might do. Like I feel threatened when maybe someone in the Muslim world, they wouldn't feel threatened by that. They'll be like, it's normal. But I might read into it a lot because of the feminist culture, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's something definitely to be careful of if you're, because if you're red-pilled, it means you've woken up to the reality of feminist agenda, sure. But then how you react to that is like, just make sure you're not overcorrecting,
Yeah. It's pride on steroids, I think, especially with that particular sort of example you gave of not marrying a divorcee. It's like, well, what are you? You were equally a piece of flesh. You were a drop of sperm. What makes you any sort of better than anybody else who's had things happen in their lives, right? But do you know what? This does kind of show me another issue that has kind of cropped up. And it makes me start thinking like my dad a bit, or like the older generations, right? It's so crazy how that we grow up, bro, and we think, oh, we know better than our parents, and we know better than those generations, or we can do things differently. But actually, time and time again, it just goes to show that what I'm talking about specifically is the idea of marrying outside of cultures, marrying someone quite far away, right? And a lot of that comes from this desire to kind of be a bit more exotic, right? I want to marry someone from far away, different. I want to get away from my background, whatever it is. And it's kind of like maybe a extension of that rebellious phase in our lives of teenagehood, which is probably a social construct anyway. But because society has allowed us that phase, we have then adopted that phase and internalized that phase. Now, what happens is you want this exotic kind of difference in your life. Men want people from far away, from the complete other side of the world. Women likewise. In terms of culture, in terms of practice. And then they'll say to themselves, oh, but I'm not cultural myself, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not cultural. And bro, I'll champion this all the time. I'd always say, oh, I don't really have culture. I don't really have that. Bro, there's so many things I have I can't say that are Arab or North African culture, but they're definitely culture in my family. And they borrowed from somewhere. They've come from somewhere. I didn't even realize I had them, right? I'll give you one example, right? One example of something that happened recently. I come home with shopping, right? And I put it on when I come home with shopping, bro, I just have this thing in my head that my family have to come to the door, have to come and see what I've bought and say thank you and all this stuff and be excited, and then that's it. And I definitely do not put the stuff away after I brought it, right?
Yeah.
I remember coming home and, my wife was really busy doing something. May Allah bless her. She didn't come to me, and I was just like sort of stood at the kitchen with all this bag of stuff. I was like, what do I like? What, this doesn't feel right, right? And then I kind of, my wife eventually came. And I was like, why did you come here? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, and then I realized, bro, my culture is my dad. Whenever he comes home with shopping, the women of the house, whether it's my mum, the sisters, my auntie, my gran, they come take the bags off. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, and that's just, and it's such a small thing, bro, that I realized I didn't know how to. I felt insulted almost that didn't happen, even though it usually does. But like just because of this one occasion, it didn't happen. I was like, oh, and then my wife was like, oh, I don't have that in my family. I was like, well, what happens? She goes, well, my mum generally gets the shopping sometimes. My brothers do, whatever. But there's no. They live in a big house, so actually to come downstairs, get in the kitchen, for everyone to come down to you is different. I've never really had that problem in my house, right? Anyway, I know I'm just going on a bit of a tangent, but it's a tiny, tiny thing.
Bro, it's a
How
very
many
good
tiny
example.
things? It's how many little things do we just overlook, right? I'm the one who's saying I don't have culture in my life, bro. No, this woke me up. Now, to go further, then we interpret Islam through the cultures that we come from, and we say, like I said to you earlier, we want all these exotic differences and whatever. Fine, but you also want someone who's practicing. Fine. Now, cultures practice Islam in slight differences, and that's haja ma'rufa, yani that's something that is well known. It doesn't mean that one is better than another or the other's practicing closer. Islam is for everybody, but there are always going to be some variations here and there, the cultural norms. Why is it, subhanAllah, go into Islam Q&A and you ask the question, can I hold my wife's hand in public, right? You go to one sheikh in England who says, fine, what's the problem? You go to another sheikh in Saudi, be like, no, don't do that, Now, is that because Islam said yes or no? Yes, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think it's something that is, dictated to us in Islam. If you're her mahram, etc., you can hold her hand. Why not? But it's about the cultural sort of interpretations. It's about is it acceptable in that particular culture? Anyway, I keep veering off into tangents. You start butting heads when you realize you're actually way more culturally influenced than you think, especially with the relationships between men and women and what you expect. And a lot of that comes from what you've had set in stone at home. The way you've seen your father be with your mother, the way you've seen your uncles behave with your aunties, vice versa. What's expected, what the mother expects from the daughter-in-law, all of these things, bro. And the reason why I wanted to get into all of this anyway is because of what I hinted at before. In the last episode, about the fact that I'm a bit older now. Me and my wife have been together for a long time. She's had friends that have been married, got divorced in this time. All sorts of problems. I've had brothers as well that I know that have been married and got divorced, and I've heard all of their problems. I've got sisters now that people approach me about marriage for them and all this stuff, and I see the way that kind of breaks down. And how mistakes are so openly made. And I was sitting with my mum, subhanAllah, last night, and she came to visit me. And I said to my mum, I was like, with all due respect, mum, I thought that everyone thought the way I did. Like all my friends and my peers and the people that are in my age in terms of practicing Muslims, I thought the majority automatically thought the way I did, right?
In terms of what?
In terms of just expectations, in terms of how they deal with women, in terms of what they would want in a marriage. And I think I couldn't have been further from the truth. And I'm not saying that because I'm special or whatever. I'm sure there's guys that are like me. However, I haven't come across too many. But I've realized that. Let's go into it, actually. Let's bring up the share screen again.
What have you got for us?
Just another. I was putting out my thoughts, bro.
What do they call it? Tweet storm.
It was maybe
tweet storm,
bro. So here we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to this. I'm gonna read it out for the listeners as opposed to the viewers. So I said time and time again, I'm flabbergasted. I love using that word, flabbergasted, at the inability of Muslim men to speak to potential spouses with courtesy and respect. And then I said I'm planning to do a Mind Heist episode on this, but there you go. Here it is. Anyway, I might as well start ranting, but you can be the man of the house while still deeply considering your potentials, wants, and needs. Just because you have the final say does not mean you have to have a heart made of stone. I appreciate men value obedience for good reason. But the initial assumption by many men is that women default to disobedience, when in actuality, they are human beings with wants and needs that may be different to yours. I know, right? It's an absolute shock, but hear me out. Treating your wife as a partner does not mean you are sacrificing your position as a leader. The final say will well and truly sit with you as a man. But you must well and truly take your wife's opinion and values into deep consideration. Why would you want to live in a house full of resentment from your partner? Does your ego really get such a boost from being difficult for the sake of being difficult? Treat your spouse or potential spouse, in terms of speaking about marriage, as a human being. For goodness sakes, think about how much you love your mother and how much you would want your mother to be happy and find peace. Now apply that same thinking to the potential mother of your child.
Allah.
Now you tell me what you think, bro, before we expand.
What
Because
do I think?
my greatest fear is, to actually not agree with me on this, and then suddenly I'm like, damn it, maybe I am on my own.
No, I mean, I do agree. I just want to know where this is coming from. I want to know the
Oh yeah,
stories.
there's stories, bro. I mean, look, okay, without naming names and without whatever, of course, there's been people that have come to me from my sisters and stuff, and some people I know, some people I don't know. I'll give you an example of somebody I don't know, right? Somebody I don't know probably doesn't even listen to the podcast, whatever, local to the city. So, um, obviously, the individual got in touch, whatever. I kind of knew of them because I would see them in the masjid, and I was very impressed by what I could see in the masjid and whatever. Blessed. So, I share with my sisters. I share, well, obviously one particular sister I share, and my family and my mum. For what I know, is very good and blah blah blah. Someone else actually called me up about them and said, "Oh, he's actually really strict." So, that's the only thing I didn't like is really strict. And I was like, "Oh, well, strict in my head is like Islamically strict. So that's probably a plus because this person wasn't necessarily that, But let's not go down that road. Anyway, I met the brother. All good, whatever. So then, as we progressed, what started developing, bro, is all of these sort of extra things that aren't deen, that are a bit more than just the deen being added on. Extra sort of conditions, extra
Oh,
things that
right.
I wouldn't. So, like, just to quickly give some context, when I was marrying my wife, and these kind of rules and regulations came up, I remember clearly saying to my wife, I don't mind whatever you do as long as it's not haram. If it's halal, I'm not going to stop you. If it's something I don't like, I'll tell you I might not like it, but I'm not going to stop you because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it permissible for you. So who am I to say no? And that's not me being a flipping meek and agreeable guy. That's me just owning up to the fact that Allah's wisdom is better than mine. Do you understand? So there's going to be things I don't like, but if Allah's made it halal for you, then fine, right? That's just why would I make myself a point of argument or make myself a roadblock that has no backing? Because at least a woman who fears Allah can say, well, Allah said it, I can't argue with Allah. Of course, you're going to give yourself a headache if you start making extra roadblocks for nothing, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't back it up. You can't say you're the Lord of the worlds to back that up. You're going to have a really good argument. Anyway, but let's continue. So certain things were like, well, you can't go to town on your own, even though like we all live in town anyway. Can't go to town on your own. I don't want you going to the masjid on your own. Don't want you to go to masjid without me. In fact, I don't really want you out there. My sister has like a very sort of she's very heavily into art, design, super creative, alhamdulillah. Doesn't put herself out there, wears niqab, whatever. Um, I don't really like you having social media. I don't want you to have social media like that, whatever. I get this. I get the social media thing. That's another thing. But I could understand that if it's way more like my face is up here or whatever, and that's another road. But if it's like a business and you do anyway, let's put the social media thing to the side a bit. So I was like, right, well, this is a bit much, but if he holds himself to those same standards, well, it's about personal preference, isn't it, bro?
But 1 second, bro, yeah?
Yeah,
Tell me the
I've got some
context
kicker, bro.
here.
Go
Okay,
on.
yeah, save it, yeah. So, what is the situation here? He's, interested in marriage and he's speaking to you first?
No, so at this point, we're all together, sort of speaking together.
Ah, okay.
So like what I tend to do, and this is just the way I find it easier to do things, is have a WhatsApp group chat where
Yeah,
it's myself, my sister, and this individual. And that's
yeah.
not I don't just start with that. I
Yeah.
do my own checks and balances first, and then if eventually you
Yeah.
want to get to the next step, that's what I
Okay.
kind of
I'm
do.
just wondering how you got to the point where you and him were discussing his rules.
No, so this isn't what this was something that he was discussing with my sister when we
Oh,
were
got it.
present,
Okay, understood.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So you're just observing. Yeah.
Because when I asked him what he wants in a wife, he would say something like, "Oh, somebody who's nice and is practice, or the general stuff." Okay,
Yeah.
the general stuff, whatever. Um, but because I get lulled into this concept of every guy is going to think like me if he's practicing, surely, because I'm trying to base my life on Islam, the interpretation, the culture. This is how it plays a part.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so obviously, in the world of social media, you leave crumbs, bro. You know, you leave things behind. You leave evidences of who you are as a person. And this individual, um, he essentially, it basically transpired that he has friends of the opposite gender. Okay. And, rightfully so, we questioned, well, particularly my sister was like, okay, so who are these people? Like, what are they? Oh, I grew up with them and they're friends of mine. And, if they found out I was getting married, they'd be so happy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, right. So where's the self-discipline and self-controls and rules and regulations for yourself? Is all of these rules and regulations you're bringing actually from culture and not from Deen? Or are you just conflating the two and forgetting about yourself? Like, what's going on here? Um, and that's it. This is an extreme example because he continued to justify having friends that are of the opposite gender and how happy they would be to meet my sister and all this other stuff, right? And it's just like, okay, this is crazy to me. This is insane. You can't be somebody who wants to practice the deen that is, great for you. The size that, we said it last time, didn't we, about the traditional benefits, but you don't want to make the traditional sacrifice, or you don't want to do them yourself, right? So it's very easy for men to say to women, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, but then not necessarily abide by that themselves. Now, that's just one example. The next one, and if you have any comments about that, do you have any comments about that side?
Well,
I mean, that's an extreme example, isn't it, really? I don't think that
it
anybody would
is. Yeah,
generally do
yeah.
that.
It is. Even though it's interesting, bro, because people have different levels of, you could say, self-confidence. You could also say self-aggrandizement. Is that a word? Yeah. What I mean is, one guy will be like, mashallah, very good, very put together, but he'll be like very much feeling like, oh my God, will they accept me? And then on the other hand, you'll have a guy who's like, he's walking up to the house, he just, put his cigarette out and puts perfume on himself to cover it. And he's feeling like, yeah, they're going to love me, So people have very different perceptions of themselves. That's interesting. But what he was saying about, yeah, like, like don't go out or don't go to town and this and that. You were saying that that's kind of his preference, or that's from his culture or whatever. I mean, if that was the case, this wouldn't be very hypocritical, because it would be like, okay, he has the preference, she doesn't go out much or whatever. And then Dean wise, okay, he has that shortcoming. But I would say something like not going out, women not going out, that is something you can actually kind of back with Islam. I'm not saying I know the exact rules about it, but Allah says وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, so you could use that, for example, right? So it is kind of worse, because he is saying that, he is basically coming from Islam with that, but then he's doing something that you might judge to be severely lacking, if you like.
So the issue is like, I get that, and I also I do. I think that's why it wasn't like a cut off for me, at least, from that. Although it is very impractical, considering the way that my sisters have to live their lives. They're not going out, doing whatever.
Yeah.
Some of them have jobs, some of them are anyway. So my issue was that if you're called to account on a particular issue publicly, right?
Just hold your hands
for your
up
own fault. Yeah, you say, it's something I have to work on, and I'll really try. And it's really difficult. I've known these people for years. You don't just start justifying it.
Yeah.
Because everything you've built, your house of cards that you built on is just crumbled in front of everybody's eyes. And unfortunately, you're left holding all these cards. You're like, why didn't it work out? Why didn't it happen? Well, sorry, Einstein, but like, be about it. Because honestly, Akhi, if you're going to be somebody, and this is advice to all Muslim men, if you're going to be somebody that, you know, in UK culture, you're going to be considered quite strict with Deen. You've got to actually back that up with your own action as well. You can't expect, you know, the weight of the world from your wife and not be carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, so to speak, in terms of your own responsibilities and how you hold yourself to account. And even if you're struggling to do that, you can't be proud of the weakness. You've got to admit and hold your hands up, like, this I'm really trying to do as well.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of women have weaknesses, bro. I'll give you an example. Like, a lot of women wear makeup a lot of the time, and there's conditions with makeup, and there's halal and haram with makeup, and there's all sorts of stuff with makeup. And a lot of women will admit, rightfully so, they say it's something I really struggle with. I wear it outside, something I really struggle with. There might be a small percentage of people say, oh, there's no problem, whatever. That's a red flag for someone else, right? But if a woman was to say, I have a really, you know, I struggle with it, I need to stop, blah, 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 may Allah aid me. Hey, props to you. You know, you put your hands up there. We all have weaknesses. May Allah aid you. But, you know, the men, unfortunately, maybe the pride gets in the way. I just want to justify it. Anyway, Allah knows best.
I mean, and ultimately, bro, like, you might have preferences. You might have rules or whatever that you aspire to have in your house, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. Do whatever you want. Say whatever you want, right? Yeah. But whether people are cool with that, that's a different story. That's a different story, yeah. And also, it's the way you say it as well. So you would say, there's different ways of saying it, right? Like, I aspire to a household where this happens, versus my wife is going to be like this. You know, there's different ways of saying things.
And what I didn't like a lot of the time is how, exactly what you've kind of said, the way you say things. So, like, you're talking to this individual as if you're already there. You've already crossed the finish line and you're making rules and regulations now. But hold your horses, bro. Like, and I think what it is a lot of guys, because if a woman's wearing niqab, or a woman is, you know, claims to follow to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are considered, and wrongfully so, they're considered not very hard to get. You should be lucky that you've got a guy like me interested in you, because nobody ain't going to see you in the street. Nobody's going to be chasing after your hand. What have you got to offer the world that the normative woman would, who has all of her beauty out on display? You know, you're not that person. So actually, you're Islamic. You're Islamic. You're obedient. You're dressed in an obedient way, so you're going to be obedient. And from now, I'm going to dictate what my obedience means to me, right? And it's just like, you've got no flipping idea, right? So here's another example. I'm not going to go too deeply into each situation, but I'll just give you some things that were kind of said from different people. In terms of one example was like, you will not speak your colloquial Arabic in my house, right? So my kids will not grow up speaking your Moroccan Darija or whatever. Right, and it's like, what is wrong with you? You know, where does that come from? If you don't like it, buddy, go somewhere else. Go marry someone from your own culture, your own background. Why do you want the flair and the flash of exotic women from a different country, you know, and then not want what comes with that? Their culture, their upbringing, their personality, who they are as a person, their language. Hey, kids aren't just yours. They're theirs. They're ours. It's a together thing. You know what I mean? I don't, you know, I understand like little digs about culture and stuff. Like, I mean, my wife do it all the time. Oh, Algerians like this or whatever. That comes from a place of love. It doesn't come from a place of control and absolute sort of dominance.
Depending where this guy is from, it could even be like kind of racist.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Akhi. And
where is he from, bro? Come on, tell me, bro.
Definitely not Arab. Let's just say that, okay? So
really?
North Africa. Yeah.
That's dead, bro.
But the appeal, and when I spoke to them privately, the appeal was like, oh, I want someone who's going to teach my kids Arabic and whatever. Okay. A lot of guys say that.
دابا ماشي عربية. احنا نقولوا دابا.
So, you know, that was one example. And then let me think of something else that was just insane. Generally speaking, bro, I can't think of anything too specific at the moment, but the vibe is like,
bro, that's rich, bro. How can you say you don't speak Arabic and then you're like, and then on top of that, you're like, I want my kids to learn Arabic, and then you're like, oh, no Moroccan Arabic.
So this is it. This is it. So the culture of entitlement, masculine entitlement. Okay, I'm not trying to be the feminist here by saying this kind of stuff, but I'm trying to make guys aware that they've actually fallen into this position of like they think they deserve it all because they are the men in the family, even though you're not even there yet, bro. You ain't spoken to my dad. You're nowhere near getting married. It's the first week of talking, the first day sometimes. All right, and I'm there and whatever, and you just this aura of entitlement, and I wouldn't be saying this, Aki, if it was just a one-off, right? And I see this a lot. Forget my family, my sisters. I see this with my circles, bro. I see this with other men that I engage with. I am constantly having battles with guys that I know, bro, about things like this. And I'm proud to be in disagreement. And I don't necessarily go on the back foot and say, oh, maybe you're right. Or if I feel a particular type of way, I'll continue feeling that particular type of way about an issue and how I conduct my marriage. And I've got no qualms about it. But one example, bro, is like the ownership complex is so severe that how can you tell somebody um, to have they ever considered getting their teeth done, for example, right? You should get your teeth done. Like starting talking about somebody's physical appearance, like, oh, you should improve this, you should go and do that. And just
In a marriage meeting, yeah?
yes, so just to highlight this, bro, and obviously my sister, I've spoken to my sister before I obviously did this episode, and she gave me green lights and stuff. But my sister has no issue with her teeth. That's one thing I need to say. All right, she's got no issue whatsoever. Look at my teeth, bro.
Bro, yours are amazing, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah, my sisters are just like mine, right? So for you, and I'm not saying that to deflect, bro. I'm honestly, I'd never really get involved in the marriage talks. I'm there. I observe. I'm more of a deterrent than I am
Yeah.
getting engaged in the conversation. I let them have the conversation.
Bro, you just sitting there like barbed wire, bro.
Bro, I was so angry. I called the person up there and then. I was like, and this is somebody I knew, bro. I knew him quite well. I was like, what the hell are you doing? Who says to any woman ever something like that? You have no concept of what women are, how complex women are as creatures, bro. To speak about their appearance, let alone somebody you're not even married to, you're nowhere near close enough. Do you understand? If my wife, may Allah bless her, bro, if my wife ever comes to me about physical appearance, whatever, and it's if it's something that I can see that she's got an issue with or whatever, I'll pretend I ain't even seen it, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you know what I mean? I'll be like, oh, what, really? What? I didn't even notice that. Do you understand? Even if I have noticed it, I don't care about it. But it could be anything, bro. It could be anything. Like, oh, do you think I should cut my hair a bit short or whatever? It's like, oh, it looks good. You understand? Really? No, it looks good. You understand? Oh, do you like my hair when it was like this? Yeah, it looked great. Oh, so you prefer it shorter than longer? Nah, it looks good now too. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I don't have strong feelings like that anyway, Akhi. I don't.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't. But at the same time, bro, and I get obviously some men have their rights to have their wife looking in a particular way or whatever. Fair play. But there's adab with it. And there's a style with it. And I don't think men have that style.
But I'm going to offer emotional intelligence and communication coaching.
Go for it, bro.
In order to help people get married. In order to get past the first hurdle.
Bro, I was shocked, and I still am shocked. And there's so many examples that I could give, but I'm just going to end it with those examples. And to summarize them, Akhi. Men, and maybe it's because we don't free mix, and I'm not advising free mixing, whatever. But men don't know how to talk to women. They don't, and things just collapse in these marriage talks because you're just like, this guy hasn't got a clue. This guy doesn't know, what women are like, right? And you're not, if the chauvinistic male dominance attitude, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to live in my mum's home, you're going to do this, and I need somebody that's going to listen to me no matter what. I need somebody that's going to go wherever I go and not take any of the considerations or opinions or feelings into account, because actually none of what you want matters. I'm just cutting through the bullcrap, so to speak, with all the ways that Biggs has said. Essentially, what you're saying, none of your wants and needs really matter. What matters is my program. What matters is what I'm doing as the leader of the house, right? You're saying this to somebody you're not even married to yet. Where's the appeal? You're just because somebody is religious, and this is why the good women, Akhi, unfortunately, a lot of them don't necessarily get married, or they make stupid decisions or reckless decisions. And I was talking to my mum about this, and I said to her, maybe this is why a lot of Muslim women, who maybe are quite practicing, they settle for less in terms of deen. And the reason they settle for less in terms of deen is because those guys are probably a little bit more agreeable, a little bit more loose, quote unquote. I'm not saying that's right, bro. I'm not saying that's right. And unfortunately, what happens is that that person takes the woman down with her in terms of let's just put this song on. Let's watch this particular thing. Let's go to this particular place. And suddenly the niqab comes off and the face is shown. And suddenly the hijab comes off and the hair is shown. And these kind of things that chip away because he's so accepting and he's not such a challenge and he's not. And I think men are losing the touch, bro. The religious men, the acts that are really serious about Islam, they're losing touch with, that nice guy persona that I was talking about. I'm not talking about it in a derogatory way, but just being nice. You can be religious. You can follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you can be nice to women at the same time. You can be a gentleman, and I think that's the key word, bro. I don't know. I don't think these guys know how to be a gentleman. It's fine to disagree. It's fine to sort of have different opinions on how to go about things and what you want to see in your family. But to just come in there, guns blazing, shooting your machine guns left, right, and center about all your demands and all your without an ounce of consideration for how a woman might want to live her life or what a woman might want in her household, right? And what's important to her, especially when somebody is so obviously trying to practice Islam, And it goes back to the tweet I was saying, I think, about how I think a lot of guys, they're so scared of disobedience from women because of this feminist culture, right? That they look at a woman and they think, well, she's automatically going to be disobedient, so I need to make sure right now that she's going to follow my program or she's going to be obedient in everything that I want her to be. Um, and unfortunately, that's not the case. Partnership is important. There is a partnership there because you are two quote unquote heads of a family. She's going to be responsible for a lot of things in that family. When I talk about family, I'm talking about kids. I'm talking about management of a household. I'm talking about finances. Yeah, you might have the money, but she's going to be, generally speaking, controlling like what she's going to cook that day, where the money's going to go. Do you understand the expenditure of certain things, right? You're not going to be able to track when the kids need these particular clothes or when this particular club is being done at school or whatever. All these, there is an element of partnership there. So you need to appreciate that. Yeah, there is a vice president of that household in a particular way. Every single organization has a final say, and in this respect, it's the man, and that can be established. And I don't think a lot of Muslim women are going to argue that. I think all Muslim women are going to agree, generally speaking, that the final say should be with the man, because that's just how you can't have two sort of leaders, so to speak. The final say. But I said to my mum and I said to my wife, if my wife wanted something, and I know I'm going on a bit here, sorry, but if my wife wanted something that I didn't want, something very simple. I don't know. I give an example of a chocolate bar because this is what actually happened. Okay. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I was going to the shop and I was so skint this day, Akhi, I kid you not. And my wife's like, oh, do you know, I really want this particular chocolate bar, whatever. And I never say no, Akhi. I never say no. But on this particular occasion, I was like, listen, I'm really sorry, I can't. And she was like, no worries, that's no problem. And I never usually do that. But I went into Co-op, bro, and I was looking for the stuff that I needed to get. And I just see that chocolate bar, bro. And I was like, I could go home right now and feel like a man because I said no and sat down and I'm a man. I said no. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I said no and I carried on with it. Or I could figure a way of doing this and just getting and making her happy. And of course, I went for option number 2, bro. Now imagine that in a more serious situation. I want my own space. I don't want to live with my in-laws. I want us to have our own flat or whatever. Imagine saying no with full force, full confidence. No, I want to save money. I want to be with my mum. I want to look after whatever. We're going to stay here. All right. And then a day goes by and you're still saying no. And she's upset about it and you're proud that you said no and you're proud that you're sticking to your guns. And another day goes by and you're proud to sticking to your guns. Can any man really, with a sincere heart, continue upsetting their wife or somebody they're supposed to love, right? Feeling no guilt whatsoever. I can't do it, bro. I can't say no to somebody that I care about, whether it's my son, my sisters, my mum, or especially my wife. I can't say no to something that is actually, it's not a haram thing. I haven't got no backing from the Quran or Sunnah to stop me from this. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Just to continue saying no without my heart feeling penetrated by the guilt that this is consuming me with. And it reminds me of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where there are narrations of him never saying no to somebody, always basically essentially trying his best to provide for people that asked him for favors, that asked him for things, right? But we've got this culture of like masculinity means that you put your foot down and it stays down. What you say goes, and that's it. And how proud and happy do you feel with yourself? So when that wife or when that spouse brings that issue back up, like, listen, I know we spoke about it before, but can we really consider doing this, or can we really consider getting that, or whatever? I know you don't have the money now, whatever it is. No, of course not, woman. We spoke about this before. Storm out, and that's your escape plan. You've stormed out of that situation. You left her dealing with that issue, right? And you go out with the lads and you go and have fun, and you don't have to. And you come back home and you're like, if she comes back to me with that thing, I ain't speaking to her for the rest of the night. In fact, I'm gonna go sleep on the couch. She needs to learn to be obedient because this is serious. But if you break the issue down, Akhi, it's not even a halal. If she's saying, "Oh, I want to go to the flipping the pub or something," oh, that's an extreme, but whatever. Fair play. Put your foot down, and that's Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, backing you there in terms of Quran and Sunnah. But if it's something like, I don't know, a new sofa because your sofa's got a hole in it, or a new, bed because you're sleeping on the floor, Inshallah, I'd love to. I'll try. Show some enthusiasm, and I think that's the key thing. Even my final thing, and I know I'm going on a lot. Even if you cannot do, you cannot afford, it's out of your hands. At least show enthusiasm. Let's make dua, darling. Let's make dua. I'll try and do it. I'll try my best. As soon as I can, I will. That's it. That's all women want, really.
Yeah.
They know they're living with you, bro. They don't want you
more
to
than the thing.
Yeah, they want the enthusiasm. Anyway, I've ranted long enough. I knew it was going to be a rant.
It's good, bro, because when when you're passionate about something, then you tend to express yourself well. I wanted to ask you, this scenario, like the chocolate bar scenario, for example. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the examples you gave, the examples. What's the chocolate bar?
Oh, it's a galaxy, bro. Big galaxy bar.
Okay, good choice, I would say.
Yeah. I never say no, Aki. I know just for that that day. I think I don't know. I was feeling a bit weak in terms of like my. We all do, bro. We all have those days where we feel a bit weak about our risk, and we shouldn't do. That's kind of what I felt. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about another scenario where it's not as black and white, because a chocolate bar, most people, they can afford that, right? Like you, in the end, you could afford it. You had to push yourself, but you could afford
it, right? Yeah, of
course. But I was thinking like the example of, it's very difficult living with, the in-laws, for example. Can we get our own place, kind of thing? Yeah. That is not as simple as, oh yeah, we'll do it, or no, we won't do it. The situation could very well be that I would like to do that, but we can't do it. Or it could very well be that on one hand, I see where you're coming from. On the other hand, I've thought about it. I'm just deciding to prioritize being close to my mom and taking care of my mom.
Yes,
yeah. And that's like, now it becomes a bit more complicated, right? It's not you're saying no because you just want to prove that you're the final decisions with you. It's that you're really thinking about it and you're deciding against what your wife would prefer, And in that case, I think what you said was correct in terms of showing understanding, showing a level of empathy, showing a level of desire to please your wife.
Yes.
In something that's reasonable. But then ultimately there will be the time where you say, I understand, I feel for you, but still no. Like that is a scenario as well.
And I think, and I'll specifically talk about this issue, what you mentioned, because it is the most prevalent that most people are going to go through, right?
Yeah.
Especially, with the difficulties economically that men face in terms of moving out and stuff. But my key thing is here, don't disregard the benefits that would also bring you as a man to have your own space. So when your wife is saying, trying to discuss the benefits, the privacy element, right? The I don't know what you want to call it, the space to basically have your own space. It's normal. It's something everyone's going to want to desire. Don't dismiss the fact that you would actually enjoy that and benefit from that as well. Imagine having your own space to work. Imagine having to deal with less sort of politics in the household. All of these kind of things, bro. Yes, there is a cost involved. But if you can't clearly demonstrate why that is an issue for you right now. I get the general issue is I can't afford it. All right. Some people, they can afford it, but they choose not to. Like, no, I think my money could be spent elsewhere. I could say theoretically, do you know, I want to invest that money that I could spend, right? Why would I want to do that? I want to invest that money, right? There's zero enthusiasm there. There's zero empathy there. There's zero sort of understanding of what the wife wants. At the end of the day, Akhi, and let's be real with it, if you're spending all that extra money on your wife or whatever, benefiting her with all sorts of holidays, whatever it is that spare money is doing, great. I'm sure she's loving that. But the reason she's so fixated on this is generally probably coming from a place that you will never be able to appreciate and understand. Okay, a woman is going to be experiencing different things in the household, different pressures, different sort of. She's going to have different wants and needs. Can't express herself in sometimes what may feel like a very weird and strange sort of prison environment because you can't really be yourself in someone else's home. You know. And then dealing with some of the politics that can come about, and everybody knows this is no secret, bro. This comes up in every single Islam Q&A flipping questionnaire. It comes up every week, bro. I see it on there. In-law relationships and all this sort of stuff. To the extent, Akhi, where I have to start looking this up. I looked it up recently about the rights of a woman and in terms of marriage. And I'm not saying Islam Q&A is black and white, but it gives you a general understanding of what the texts kind of indicate to us, right? And generally speaking, yes, a woman has a right to her own place. The nature of what that place is may differ in terms of the capacity of the man. But going back to what I said, we'd like to at least have a bit of enthusiasm from the guy. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because nobody is expecting, and Allah knows best, nobody is expecting you to live with your parents forever, right? Because I don't even think there's an element of strength there. I think there's a bit of weakness that you have to kind of rely on that forever. You'd like to be a guy that can stand on his 2 feet and obviously, inshallah, benefit both sides of the family, benefit maybe your parents and stuff. There's going to be details. If your mother's sick or she's on her own or wherever it is, there's going to be details. And you'd like to think that a woman would appreciate those details, especially if they're quite specific and quite, intense things that you just out of your hands. But failing to translate that, having zero empathy, and having zero enthusiasm for a brighter future. And inshallah, do you know what? I would love to, my wife wants to travel, bro. And I can't afford it. And this is me right now. This is me speaking about my situation. I can't afford it as much as I'd like to, right? But I would love to. When we see something on YouTube and stuff, absolutely, like, oh, I'd love to go there. I would love to take you there. There's nothing stopping me from wanting to take you there apart from my finances right now. And may Allah allow me to do that.
Yeah,
bro,
that
means the world, Akhi. That means the world. If you don't know how to speak to women, you're not going to get very far.
I think that is the overall message. Like I would concur with that, like fully. Like the way you react is kind of everything. Like it's like 90%, and just because you decide against her wish, even in an issue that's nothing to do with haram halal, you decide against it. But there is that level of empathy, understanding. And she knows deep down overall that you do care for her well-being. You do want to give her, the best, right? Yeah. I think ultimately that is what matters. And that's what matters to her. And that's what will allow her to very much accept and be patient on the things where you do say no, that's like a solid thing to take away from it. I didn't want... Yeah, and personally, maybe you did want to say this. I didn't want to be saying that if you say no, it's only self-serving. No, sometimes it's not self-serving. Sometimes it's like, look, as someone responsible for you, I feel like that's the wrong thing to do. I'm not saying it's haram to do it, but I don't think it's the right thing. So, don't do it, right?
If you say yes now, we'll suffer later.
For example, because... This is part of what I consider part of being a man, and part of being a leader actually is to kind of be on the ball. And so if you're on the ball, there might be situations where you might have more insight than your wife, and therefore you're in a position to say, I know you feel like that's the best, but I don't personally feel that. Of course, you can give your reason, you can explain it to her. Explaining is not a weakness. Explaining is to communicate, to allow understanding. Right? Because, so that's something I wanted to say. And also, don't overcorrect, man. Like a lot of what I'm hearing from you is people overcorrecting in terms of they feel so worried that their wife won't obey them, that they're requiring their wife to obey them in something that's not even for the sake of it, for the sake of obeying, right? It's like,
and not
don't eat
offering.
that piece of toast just because I said so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she didn't eat that toast. Yeah, I'm the man. Yeah.
Some of the questions, Zaki, some of the questions that may be asked in a marriage meeting is, if I stopped you from doing something that's halal, would you obey me? Those are questions I see a lot, bro. And it's like, well, straight away, I know where your mind's going with that and what you're trying to sort of, achieve. But just to offer some advice, and I don't know, I think maybe men sleep on this, but it's like, okay, if you can't do the thing she wants, then do the next best thing you can do in that moment. I'm really sorry we can't move out. How about next week we go to this hotel, or how about this evening we go out to this place?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Like that
goes back to showing that you actually care. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, I can't do this big thing, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to do anything. I'll try my best to do something else, even if it's just to take your mind off of this issue that's stressing you out. Because guess what? I care about you, or I love you. Hey, it's easy for you to say that. Like, some people can't do that, bro. Some people can't do that because they didn't grow up in households like that. I know I definitely didn't grow up in a household where my dad told my mum that he loves her, or my mum. But bro, I tell you what, when my mum first ever called my dad darling in front of me, it blew my mind. My dad was upset about something. Man, Allah bless him, bro. I think he, and it was something really touching. I remember it so vividly. He was in Tunisia. He was going through his cupboard and he found a jibba, bro, like a thobe that belonged to my grandfather, right? And all of a sudden, bro, my dad just started getting really emotional, started crying. And I'd never seen him like that before, right? And my mum comes up to him and she's like, oh, don't worry about it, darling. And I heard darling, bro. And I was just like, what the flip? I was so like kind of grossed out. Not grossed, but like just shocked and all that there was some level of affection there. So listen, just because you didn't grow up in a household that was so overtly affectionate, when I went to my in-laws, bro, and they were calling each other babe in front of me at the dinner table, bro, I was going to throw up because I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
But just because you didn't grow up with that doesn't mean that it's completely alien to you, And I'd like to think that showing that and growing up in a family that can display and show love to each other and appreciation and empathy with each other is super beneficial for kids. Super beneficial for kids to grow up in that healthy environment. I'd like to think that my sons especially will grow up to be gentlemen that respect people and put people where they should be put in terms of their status. And like, I'll give you an example, right? One thing that really, like, a pet peeve of mine when it comes to men is I can't stand a man that can't hold his hands up and apologize about doing something wrong, right? So you've done something wrong, you've made a mistake, as we all do, you made a mistake with your wife, you made a mistake with a family member, you made a mistake with a friend. I'm so sorry. Do you know what? You're right. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I made a mistake. Hands up. That's it. Not shouting, screaming, flipping, deflecting, mind games, like trying to make it out that it's not your fault. It's because of them that you. Do you know what I mean? It's because of them that you did that thing. So it's your fault, actually. And my son, he's got this habit now that he's at school that he'll just keep like saying, like insulting people. Oh, you're a poo-poo head, or you're stupid, or something like that. He'll bring it up from school. And he must have said something like that to my wife. He must have said, oh, be quiet, stupid, or shut up, stupid. And I'm absolutely not having that in the house, right? So I told him sternly, I was like, listen, you either go to your room and you stay in your room, or you can come and apologize to mummy, right? And he kept coming over and he's doing that thing where he doesn't want to apologize, but he's trying to make a joke, or he's trying to like say, oh no, you know what I mean? All this sort of stuff. And I know that behavior because I see it in men where they kind of like, they don't want to apologize. They'll just do everything but apologize, but just flat out apologize.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him as he's a 4-year-old, bro, but I spoke to him like he was a friend of mine, like he's my age. And I said, listen, I am not having you grow up to be a man that can't apologize, especially to your mother, right? Let alone in general, just to have that. I said, you either apologize now and you say sorry, or you go to your room and you think about how you're going to apologize when you come out. Because I'm not having it, bro. I'm not raising sons like that just can't hold their hands up when they make a mistake. We all make mistakes, akhi. And that seed of like failure to apologize can grow up into failure to seek istighfar, failure to blame Allah for things that you did, right? And I see akhi in men today, men especially that are far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they'll blame Allah for things that they did. They'll blame Allah for the situations they put themselves in, for the actions and mistakes that they took, and I despise it. And God forbid you raise sons that start blaming their wives for things that they did, they had control over. Imagine you have all sorts of problems, akhi. Any problem that you have with shaitan, bro, that you've got an issue that shaitan's whispering to you. And you turn around, you blame your wife. You blame your wife because it's easier to blame her than to own up to your mistakes, right? And I hate that so much, akhi. And may Allah not make us one of those people, bro. May Allah make us sincere.
Ameen.
Oh, bro, I've got such a bad throat. Why did I do this today?
Yeah. Bro,
anyway. Go on.
I don't know if you can say this, but this guy, that didn't want his wife to, like, go outside or go to town or whatever,
Yeah.
He's, like, born and raised in the UK, right?
So, funny about that. He's not. He's North African.
Oh.
But he, since early teens, maybe he's been in Europe at least. Now, it was interesting because my dad, funnily enough, despite the fact that he hasn't got a history of practicing, Islam fully, whatever you want to call it, I've realized that we align in a lot of things. Okay, he's very pro on like women having a sense of security. For example, I think he's been kind of not hurt, but like he's seen religious men doing bad things. And he hates that hypocrisy. And that was one of the big barriers to stopping him from practicing.
All North Africans have that, for some reason.
I remember him saying, like, oh, if I'm going to start practicing, I've got to be 100%. I can't have these weaknesses or whatever. So he hates that. So, like, for example, if somebody gets married and does the religious Islamic ceremony, he's like, you have to go and do the government thing as well, like
legal
the registry
one,
or whatever. You have to, because he is probably seen a lot of guys that just use the Islamic thing as a leeway, as a way of, and there was a generation that did that, akhi, as a leeway of taking advantage of women, or whatever you want to call it, or not giving women their rights, or whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, when there's no Sharia courts, right, the onus on the man abiding by the Sharia of an Islamic marriage is purely on him as an individual.
Yeah, his fear of Allah. Yeah.
So all that control belongs to him. There's no Sharia court to go to or sheikh to go to, especially in those days, bro, when he lived up north and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just, there wasn't any Muslims up in the 70s.
Wild West.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So he's saying the next best thing is at least get your flipping rights from the kuffar, so to speak, right? So I appreciate that, right? Obviously, that kind of mentality has continued on, even though that societies have evolved in terms of Islamic societies have evolved in the UK. I can't remember where I was going with this. But this is what I was saying. So he was giving me some example of this long time ago when he was working in some restaurant. There was these North Africans. I'm not going to name the country specifically. It wasn't a country that we're from in Tunisia. North Africans came and started working with him, and he was like, these guys, they're always out every night. They're always out, either drinking or whatever it is, or with the lads, this kind of lad culture. And their wives are like locked up at home. They're like their wives can't be seen. They can't be this. They can't be that. And my dad was like, I don't get the double standards there. The things that they do are ridiculous. They're not. At least if you're going to be like that, then be a family man. Be at home and be there for your kids, and don't just start having different wives every here, left, right, and center, but then not being there for any of them. To the extent where actually this week, he was like, oh, he was speaking about the father of a friend of mine, right? And he was like, I met your friend's dad the other day. And I had a go at him. I said, you need to spend more time with your son. And then off the back of that, and I don't know, maybe he was planning this already, that friend's dad took my friend out on holiday abroad, and now they're all together, spoke on Instagram. And I showed my dad, and he goes, oh, look, he took my advice. That's good. But my dad's very strong on like family, being there for your family and whatever. Anyway.
And that's what gives the young men models for how to have marriage meetings.
Yeah, but this isn't even the kicker for this example, bro. The kicker, what I was trying to get to, was these people that he was saying that had that mentality. This person I was speaking about came from the same place, the same country, the same neck of the woods. So when my parents heard that he's from this particular place, they were like to me, oh, no, those people, oh, no, they're very, very strict on their women. They're very strict on their women, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. I'm not going to just listen to your stereotype. Well, sometimes stereotypes they have some truth in them, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that if a culture or a society of people from a small area of a country have this idea of what women's position in a family are, and whether that comes from Islam or just the culture, then it is going to be very likely that the individual from that area is going to have grown up with those same expectations. Now, you chip away at that in a marriage meeting. That's what marriage meetings are for. You find out if that's the same thing that they follow, right? If in a particular culture the woman is not allowed to work at all, then you chip away at that. If that person's from there, you ask that question. If there's something that you want to work as.
Yeah.
And then the halal haram is going to be the foundation for it all. The Islam is going to be the foundation for it all. So yeah, ultimately, what can I say, bro? I think we've given some advice, but you tell me, what can we say to the lads?
There's one thing maybe we didn't touch on too much, which is the emotional intelligence, the communication, the how to speak to, I don't even want to say speak to women, just how to speak based on different situations and circumstances. Yeah. This is how can you say it, man? It's basic. It's basic, but when we're speaking, I'm always thinking about, okay, certain people are like this. Why are they like this? How can we find excuses for them, kind of thing, right? And sometimes there's no excuses, but there's still reasons, right? Yeah. So yeah, I can imagine how it's linked to not being maybe close to your father, not mixing with people who are married, like we talked about many times, not having relations with people who are older than you, and this kind of stuff is there's an element to that, definitely, when it comes to the knowing how to communicate in different situations. For example, if you want to know, like, having a wife who's obedient, I can understand why you would want to know that, but it does not mean that you go and ask the question directly. Are you obedient? I mean, she probably doesn't even know because she's never been married before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah. So you got to be subtle. You got to be wise, and you've got to find ways of understanding the person without asking them. Because, by the way, this is a tip, is people always think they're better than they are. People find it difficult to be completely honest about how they are, because they don't even believe they are the way they are. They have a different image, whether it's worse or better, of themselves. So the better way to learn about someone is ask them indirect questions, speak to their friends, family, this and that, and don't go to their sister, go to their mother, brother, whatever, and say, oh yeah, is she obedient? No, don't ask that. That's not how you're going to get the answer. You're going to go, I don't know, I'm trying to think of examples, but go ask them, like, okay, what was your life like growing up? What was your childhood? And what was your relationship with your father like, with your mother, with your siblings? Did you all get on? Did you fight with some of your siblings? Yani, this is how you learn about how someone is, I would say.
You're right, bro, because you know what? I didn't discover all this, and I said this to my wife. I didn't discover all of this sort of masculinity, red pill, whatever, all these different things that we were talking about last episode. I didn't know anything about that before I got married. When I was getting to know my wife, it was literally just, did we have the same sort of upbringing? Do you know what I mean? Are the things that I was exposed to completely alien to her? Anyway, but these things carry on even within a marriage. And just a short piece of advice to brothers that are already married, right? I do think that sometimes as men, we don't give my sister, my little sister, she's not that little anymore, but my youngest sister, she was here last night as well, and she said something which was really important. She said a lot of these guys, they just don't want to humanize women. They just don't want to, they've got an issue with humanizing them, right? And it reminded me of something that happened with my wife the other day, where I asked my wife a specific question about her upbringing, and we were driving back from London, right? So we had like a 2-hour drive. Actually, from start to finish, bro, she was just literally telling me everything from her life, ups, downs, issues that happened, struggles that happened, really deep and horrible things that had happened to her that completely just, like, you just get this sort of rush over you that you just want to protect this person. You really care about this person, because guess what? You've shown real empathy there. You've actually listened to what they've said, and you've tried to put yourself in their shoes when it comes to these experiences. And she was showing me like pictures of herself when she was a little girl and stuff like that. And I was just like looking at that little girl, bro, and I was thinking, this is incredible. Like, this is a life, bro. This is an entire life, completely different to mine. All sorts of crazy experiences. Don't just put the spotlight on your own life and think about, oh, my life was like this, my life was like that, and I struggled like this, I struggled like that. And then when somebody else starts talking about their life, someone that actually is your, significant other, you're very dismissive and you don't really care too much and whatever it is. Like, and I see that in guys, bro. You've got to really put yourself in their shoes and try and imagine what it was like to live through their sort of challenges, or to have the sort of stuff that have happened to them. Right? It isn't just this possessiveness of like, oh, she's my wife and that's it, and that's an object that belongs to me, bro. This is a human being, man, with all sorts of experiences and life challenges and ambitions and all sorts of stuff. Growing up in a society, let's admit, it's not easy for any of us, let alone women, who are probably the most attacked when it comes into sort of the easiest target for these kind of ideologies to grasp at, right? Whether it's feminism, or whether it's capitalism, whether it's all these isms, right? The first person they go to attack is the women. The first person that the racists go to attack is the women. All these, so yeah, there are going to be some women with walls up that you're going to have to chip away at. And if you're a guy and you just don't get it, then just talk. That's the easiest thing to do. If you're a husband and you just can't figure it out, or if you're even in a marriage meeting, bro, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's probably the best place for it. In a marriage meeting, you want to know about somebody's upbringing with obviously with some level of detail, because the woman's not going to be 100% open about some of the issues they've gone through if their family are present. But it'll give you a good idea, definitely. It'll give you a good idea of some of the challenges they faced, and you'd like to think, alhamdulillah, at least I'm a brother. But it could be difficult if there's like a father there, or it depends on the relationship with the sibling or whoever the mahram is, right? But just talk about. Don't have to ask these stupid questions about, are you obedient? Would you listen to me if I told you to jump off a cliff? What does that mean? Like, who are... Well,
Would you memorize the whole Quran if you had the time?
If you had the time.
Like, how do you know?
You've never been married. Yeah. If I came... Would you cook me a meal every night if I came home? At the end of the day, bro, these are yes or no questions that women can just say yes to. So what are you achieving there? You need to work a bit harder in terms of trying to get to know this person. And likewise for you, Akhi, if they're asking you a question just like you're asking them, why are you getting so defensive, or why are you getting so sort of insulted by these questions?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
When it's something to do with economics or whatever, well, that's my business, that's my problem, that's for me to worry about. Well, no, she's going to want reassurance as well. Surely, imagine giving up a woman who gets married, bro, and a lot of guys don't really appreciate this. A woman that gets married and then has to go through a messy divorce, that stays with her for the rest of her life. Maybe for a guy, he hasn't got the stigma attached to him as much as a woman would have a stigma. And we know that. Bro, the flipping guy on YouTube was talking about sloppy seconds, for goodness sakes. I was disgusted by that. I'm still really furious about that. He was talking about women that had been divorced, the sloppy seconds, perpetuating the stupid, disgusting, vile sort of attitude and stereotype. Not even a stereotype, but this stigma that women have that are divorced. So if you're growing up in an environment, or living in an environment where, unfortunately, divorcees are seen with this dirty stigma, of course you're going to want to get it right the first time. You're not going to want to get a divorce. You're not going to want your husband to sort of. So yeah, man. I was very unaware of red pill. I was very unaware of these things, and this year has been an eye opener for me, because. Even sitting with some brothers, may Allah bless all the brothers that are striving, Akhi. I just realised that there's so many things when it comes to, because I'm obviously, a lot of my friends are married, and I said this to you before, how 99% of the people I hang out with are married people. So you see now the way they conduct themselves. Imagine, like, I was out with the guys the other day, and it was like 6 o'clock, bro. I didn't even realise, and it was sunset, obviously after Maghrib. It felt late for me. They're like, oh, we're going to go to the other side of London. I said, I don't want to do that. Just drop me off home. I'd rather be with my wife. I remember specifically saying, I'd rather be with my wife. And they started making fun of me, bro. They started making fun of me. And, my wife's had some bad news lately and whatever. There's all sorts of stuff going on at home. If I would rather be with my wife, that's none of your business. That's what I would rather do. It's not the fact that, my wife is telling me to come home. That's a different story. Oh, my wife's telling me to come home. Why is she telling me to come home? Oh, well, that's a different story, right? But people like to make fun of that, and guys have this competition with each other about who's the most masculine, who's the leader of the house. And But
But
yeah,
it's all based on fake criteria. That's the problem. It's
absolutely.
based on stupid criteria. It's based on performance rather than substance. So I guess you change culture over time. But you're right, bro. There is a culture of this makes me a man, and if you're not going to fit into that, then we're going to make fun of you. But ultimately, bro, a real man, he'll be like, all right, you have your thing. This is Islam, and I'm living by it as much as I can.
Yeah.
So see you in Jannah, inshallah.
It doesn't make you insecure, though, does it? It shouldn't make you like, we said last episode, didn't we? Like, a lot of men feel threatened by these things and they're insecure about these things. And this is why I said about nice guys, quote unquote. Just be confident about the stuff that you're into. In addition to marriage, in addition to how you conduct yourself as a husband. So what, you want to be home on the weekend? I don't want to see the lads this week. I want to be home with the kids. I want to be home with my family. I want to give them that. Oh no, but we're gonna go. What are we gonna do? Go sit around and have a coffee like we do every single day. There's everybody's got their haq, but it doesn't mean that the haq has to be 50-50, like half of the that. Anyway, we can go on forever. We can go
But
on
it comes
forever.
down to the criteria, bro.
It comes, yeah,
Like,
we can go on
like
forever.
literally, yeah. If we're truly living by the whole, our purpose of existence is to worship Allah, yeah.
Mm.
What is going to be closer? It depends. Okay, there are exceptions, but am I gonna get more edger and get closer to Jannah by having a coffee with you, or by spending time with my wife and kids?
Mm.
Probably the latter. So if our criteria really is, ibadah and this and that, then things start to actually become quite clear.
I'm sharing screen, bro, just to close up because I realize the time.
Yeah.
But just on what you've said, isn't it? Whether Abu Huraira, sorry, may Allah be pleased with him.
Harira, bro, you hungry?
I know I said Harira, didn't I? Oh, subhanAllah. Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The
Salam.
believers who show the most perfect faith are those who have the best behavior, and the best of you are those who are the best to their wives." And and the reason I want to focus on this isn't because I'm just using what suits the feminist agenda and blah blah blah. At the end of the day, akhi, this hadith is clear, right? It says the best of you, are those who are best to their wives. So, are we really asking for too much by saying that we should just be a bit more empathetic, communicate a bit more, understand a bit more? Or are we just crossing the line at the things that benefit us when we talk about obedience? Oh, you're obedient? Oh, you're obedient. That's it then. You're obedient. Or, oh, you're not obedient? Well, that's it. There's no good in you if you're not obedient. Listen, obedience doesn't just come out of thin air, you're if you are a catch and you are a provider and you're someone who listens and you're somebody who's got it held down, the security and peace under your house because of you as a man, you've maintained that peace and security. The woman who sacrifices that for silliness, you know and does silly things or disobeys for those silly reasons, well, then she's lost something very valuable there. However, if you just want your house to be a military camp, right, and you're not ready to start listening and being empathetic with those that you're responsible for, then of course, why would she stay? Why would she obey you? Well, what you give? They say, don't they? They say respect is earned, not just it's not something you deserve. You earn it. There is both. There is both. I think there is a level of respect that we should already know that we have to give to certain people. A woman should know how to give respect to a man, and when I say respect, I'm talking about in the nature of obedience, in the nature of the final say, in the nature of leadership. At the same time, be the man that deserves it. At the same time, don't just you know don't just sit on this throne that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has given you in terms of leadership without being that guy. Why do you think these leaders get toppled all over the world? Because they're not fulfilling the role that leaders should be. Even if it was just a word, akhi, of empathy, I think it goes back. If a leader, bro, of a country came out and said, it reminds me of the Tunisian one now, when he goes, "Oh, I understand you, understand you." Heck, if you said you understood us like 10 years ago, it would have been fine. But you didn't say that until we were out marching at your door. Right? But ultimately, no, it's the same thing, bro. It's like leaders, bro. Leaders need to show empathy throughout. They need to be there on the ground throughout. And those are the greatest leaders, bro, that you hear about. That they're in there, in the trenches, and you see it in a hadith of the narrations of the Sahaba when they were when Umar radiallahu anhu went to the woman that was the woman that was basically starving, boiling brocks for her baby. You know, things
Complaining
like
about
that. Like,
the Khalifa, yeah.
yeah, you're there in the trenches, and I'm not talking about the leaders in this sense. I'm talking about you as a man. You're in the trenches. You're seeing what the issues are. You're not just out whatever, doing your thing, and you come home and expect everything to be ready. Be deeply involved in the issues and the troubles and the struggles that are there. And actually, if you break things down, something will soften your heart because you see somebody you care about. Ideally, hopefully, you care about them struggling with something that's important to them. And there'll be a drive there, bi'idhnillah, to do something about it. And you can't do something about it, then do the next best thing about it. You know? But we've gone on for a long time, bro.
Yeah, bro. Jazakallah khair. You know, this is something that, inshallah, people know we're coming from a good place. We're not just trying to find faults. And I mean, myself, I know I find faults in myself in regards to some of these things. So that's why I'm mentioning it, because I've realized in myself, either in the past or maybe now as well, that I'm lacking in certain areas, like I said, like overcorrecting and these things.
I agree.
And
I don't agree that you're that like that, but I agree that I found that myself.
yeah, we're all brothers, bro, and the brothers have to help each other. We have to help each other, whether that's stopping your brother doing something sinful or helping them to do something which, gets them reward. And ultimately, we really need to build some strong Muslim families in this ummah. So that's how we're going to do it ultimately, I think, with these kind of topics. So yeah, may Allah accept it from us and make us firm and give us, balance and compassion. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Let us know what you thought. If you contact us, go to mindheispodcast.com and speak to us there, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.